My name is Adrian Nanchev, and this channel is all about championing hemp's use and bringing it into the mainstream conscience. So, click on the subscribe button below and click on the bell notification next to it for the latest uploads. So, what are 3 myths about industrial hemp? Well, firstly, is that it can supplement our fibre needs, but not entirely replace it. Secondly, more research is needed as a biofuel before it's more viable. And thirdly, it's not immune from pesticides and herbicides and other invasive species and other invasive plants. So firstly, it can supplement our fibre needs, but we need to grow millions and millions of acres worth of hemp before it can be a viable replacement and a really viable alternative to our modern day cotton and fibre consumption. For example, if we want to use hemp paper, it's only got 0.5 of the market share on paper in the world, and to get to say 18%, which from a business and marketing perspective is ideal, anything beyond that, anything between 18 to 40 is almost perfect of market share. To get even to 18%, we need to grow millions and millions more acres of hemp, purely for paper, purely of hemp. But that is going to require a lot of supply, a lot of demand, because the farmers will not just grow hemp for the sake of paper when they know it's not going to be bought, when there's no seller. So it relies on grassroots movements such as We Want Hemp to increase demand on the supply chain on consumer side for paper made of hemp. So when there's the demand, when demand exists, the suppliers are more willing to grow it, and the manufacturers are more willing to produce it and sell it to the wholesalers and to the retailers. So the myth is that it's a viable alternative. It's not, because there are so many challenges that we can't just one day start using hemp paper en masse. There's so much, we need awareness. This is the vision behind We Want Hemp. Bring it into the mainstream conscience. We can't just say, here's hemp paper, here you go, W.H. Smith, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, etc. There needs to be a grassroots movement which starts with the hearts and minds of people, and then realising that they want to use hemp paper, much more cleaner and acid-free, and it lasts a lot longer, and also it's waterproof compared to traditional tree cellulose paper. So it's going to take a lot of time and energy and hearts and minds to increase the demand and increase fibre usage. Same with textiles and clothing. People aren't going to use hemp clothing if they believe instinctively or automatically, because of propaganda or misinformation, that hemp is a rough material and more for like furniture or a haberdashery or like carpet or ropes or drapery. When they realise that hemp can be quite fine and almost like silk and linen, then they'll be more willing and they'll see it as a viable alternative when they go into a store. They won't think hemp, I can get high from that. They won't think they can get high from that. They'll just think, I can actually use that. I can actually use that and wear it, and it will last a long time. There's an old saying with hemp that it doesn't wear out, it wears in. Over time and over usage, it actually gets better through wearing and tear. It's quite bizarre that way. Other thing is that more research is needed before it's a viable biofuel. But the interesting paradox is twofold. Rudolf Diesel, the inventor of the internal combustion engine, didn't intend petroleum and diesel to be the main fuel source. He intended hemp and other biofuels. But the interesting thing is that places like Norway, by 2025, want to ban or get rid of all chemical and petrochemical cars on the road, and they want to move completely to electricity and renewable energy cars. So I think the future, as biofuels in general, are quite limited, especially in the residential market. Maybe in agriculture or industry or space exploration. For the space exploration, maybe not in the long term, but certainly in the short to medium term. And agriculture, I've no idea. We're looking for electric tractors. I don't know if they exist just yet, but as a biofuel, much more research is needed, as well as other drawback with hemp. I think other myth behind it is to use hemp as a biofuel. We need to grow millions of acres for just biofuel, but those millions of acres could also be used for other crops and or hemp for other reasons, like dual crops, like the fibres or for the seeds, are not purely just for the biofuel. Because I think biofuels are generally on the way out, so I don't see the point in using this land for biofuel when it's got better uses for textiles or food, and we're going to get the fuel from, say, solar or any of the sources. So as a biofuel, there's much more research needed, but I also think the future for biofuel is in doubt. Lastly, hemp is still subject to herbicides and pesticides. It's not immune from weeds, it's not immune from animals. There's talk that the THC in cannabis indica is a defense mechanism against animals, so when they eat the plant, you get the hallucinogenic effects, and they forget where they found that plant originally. So that's the idea behind that. But there are some weeds that do affect its growth, but because it's so tall and deep, and there's deep roots, it tends to stifle out the weeds. And what's interesting is that in crop rotation, if you were to grow hemp from April to September, and then afterwards grow things like wheat, there's a 10% yield in wheat, because hemp tends to stifle out the roots in the actual field. So it's interesting in crop rotation, but it's not immune from it. It doesn't require no pesticides. It requires few pesticides, few and far between, but it requires a lot less than the majority of other crops out there. But it still does require herbicide and pesticide. If you click on the link in the description to the blog, I actually include include the names of 2 highly toxic fertilizers, pesticides that often are used on hemp. They've got some interesting names. Aldi crab, and Profefanos, something like that. Interesting, bizarre names, but check them out in the description below, and of course look at the names in general. You know, I don't really know too much about those in general, but they are used in the process. But look into those as well. But those are the 3 main myths with hemp. It's not a magical cure-all plant. There are drawbacks and limitations to it, but these things can be overcome, or we can compensate for them. But hemp is not a magical cure-all plant. It's very alien because it has some properties that, like phytoremediation, that we don't see in many other plants, and it can be used for other industrial materials, which you don't see that very often. Phytoremediation and a versatile use. But it is very alien and very helpful and very versatile in that way. But it's not a cure-all magic cure crop, and that's worth understanding and knowing about. How interesting is that? But remember, if you haven't already, click on the subscribe button below and click the bell notification next to it for the latest uploads. How cool is that? You'll see me again soon if you click subscribe. Bye for now.